talking about things. But I think tonight is really all about bringing us all up to date and up to a level speed on the process of budgeting as we move forward and get to watch staff plow through it. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And Chelsea, you want to do a quick roll call for us?
Yes. Alex? I do not see her yet. Ryan? Dawn?
Present.
David?
Present.
Kim? She is not here yet. Peck?
Present.
Will is absent tonight. And then Lori. Perfect.
All righty. Do we have any public with us tonight? I don't see any on my screen, but nope. Okay. Are there any?
We do have Lindy. She's in the audience.
Oh,
She does have her hand raised. I'm going to let her talk for just a minute. We'll see if it's for public comment or just viewing.
And Lindy is our newly appointed council person that stepped in for Carl Exner.
oh, great.
Yep. Hi, Lindy.
Hi, Lindy. Are you there? Oh, I hear some breathing there.
It's unmuted on my end.
Lindy, if you're there, it'd be nice to, I'd like to welcome you. And if you wouldn't mind taking a moment or two to kind of talk a little bit about your interest with Parks and Recreation. Or not.
Let me try. I'm gonna promote her and just see if maybe it's a muting issue.
Okay.
Let's see.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Lindy, welcome.
Awesome. Sorry. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Was so impressed over with the park opening and with all you guys have done. So thank you and happy to be here.
Great. Well, we are happy to have you. Did you have any specific comments or are you just along for the ride tonight?
I am along for the ride tonight, if that's okay.
Absolutely. We welcome you. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to Rochelle. Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. Consent agenda. Approval of minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at minutes? Yes, is there a motion to approve minutes?
I'll extend the motion to approve minutes.
I'll second that.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All righty, approved. All right, new business. I will turn it to Rochelle for an overview of the Parks and Rec budget.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. And I encourage you as we go through this presentation tonight, you are free to raise a hand or jump in and ask a question. I don't want to be boring for the next 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes while we do this presentation. So I do strongly encourage asking questions, and then I will do my best to answer those questions. And if for some reason I can't, I will make sure to enlist our finance director in the conversation. So I'll take copious notes, but I will be going over the budget this evening. And again, really, it's just to educate the Parks Board as we start to enter into the next budget cycle, which we'll actually start planning here in the very near future. And so I just wanted to make sure we were all up to speed. And if we had any questions, make myself available to help with that. So, all right, tonight, and then can you guys all see my slides? Yeah, okay, perfect. So the agenda for tonight, so we'll be talking about an understanding of the city budget and in particular the Parks and Recreation funding. We'll talk about documents that will be driving the department's budget goals and how that interfaces with the budget committee and then council's goals. We'll talk about the city budget and who gets to make those decisions, Sandy's budget philosophy, the budget timeline, and then we'll talk about the biennium 2023-2025 citywide resources and expenditures. So we'll take a look at the really large biennium, and then we'll start to get granular and we'll talk specifically more about Parks and Recreation, the operating costs, and the overall general fund allocations. So we'll go big, then we'll kind of focus in. And then we'll talk about the Parks and Recreation capital improvement budget and some of the things that we've accomplished this year and then looking into the future. And then we'll talk about fiscal year 2023-2025 as far as our alignment with city council goals. And then again, we'll take a look into the 2025-2027 fiscal year. And then we'll talk about conclusions and next steps, because this is just one of many steps this time where we're going to learn a little bit about the budget, talk about goal setting, recommendations, and then how the Parks Board can be engaged. Pardon me, you guys, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'd have to take frequent drinks of water. Okay, so the city budget. So it's interesting to understand how the city budget is formulated and is actually one of the most powerful pieces of policy that is created by the city council. And the budget sets goals that are established by the council. And then those goals are essentially our marching orders as the city manager and departments to move forward into the next biennium. And that's one of the things that we talk about as far as when we look at what we've accomplished this last biennium and where we're heading. It's important to understand that there's two key bucket allocations. So for example, we have operational costs and we have capital improvement budget. Those two budget buckets are completely different, and you can't use capital improvement budget with your operational expenses. Legally, that's not something you can do. So an operational cost is funds that are day-to-day costs of running city departments. So it's going to be your personnel, your maintenance, your repairs. It covers any of the essential expenses, again, like materials and services and personnel. Your capital improvement budget is dedicated to funding long-term projects and infrastructure projects. So for example, Cedar Park was considered a capital improvement project. And it's going to support major investments like new facilities, upgrades, and other projects that have long-lasting value. So your role as a Parks Board is to really understand the nuances or the Park and Rec budget and provide, as we move through this process, provide insights that will help inform or provide recommendations that not only align with our department, but as the budget committee and then the council moves through the next planning cycle. And you'll see throughout this presentation, there's several links to references, and we can send this out. It's also attached on the agenda packet, but it includes links. So if you guys, I'm always someone that like wants to chase down every detail. So if you want to do that, we have provided the links. So there's the adopted budget where you can go look at the 2023-2025 adopted budget. And then again, emphasizing that most of everything that's going to be happening between now and when the budget is actually adopted is all dictated by public law and processes. So I did provide a link to that if you're curious about how that looks as far as a larger state role. So there are several documents that help inform the department and the city budget. And one of them that's key is the Parks and Trails Master Plan. And so when we start to look at the next biennium, we'll take a look at essentially the strategic plan that is created in the Parks and Trails Master Plan that talks about areas that need additional parks, potentially trail connections, and then parks that are suggested in the master plan that should be built out 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10 to 15 years. And again, this is a really good guiding North Star, not only for us as a department, but then as the Parks Board to look at, and then the Parks Board to recommend to council as far as future park projects. Taking a step back even further and looking from a 50,000 foot level, you have your citywide comprehensive plan. And just something that's interesting and to note is that the Parks and Trails Master Plan is actually an adopted document that sits along with the comprehensive master plan. And the comprehensive plan is a blueprint for the city for the next few decades for city planning. And it's going to include topics like economic development, your environmental sustainability, natural resources, talks about public facilities, transportation, and more. And the last comprehensive plan was actually updated in 1997, and the city is in the process of updating the comprehensive plan. And maybe there's an update on this. It might have been updated or adopted, but what it does is the comprehensive plan now will provide a vision for the future of Sandy. And it creates an opportunity for the city stakeholders to discuss ideas. And if you guys remember a while back, we had planning and building come and talk to us about the comprehensive plan and asked for our input. And I think that was probably around a year ago, if memory serves. And so this will give us a roadmap as a city that will help developers also ensure that the future development is aligned with Sandy's priorities. It's called Envision 2050. And our specific goal in the comprehensive plan for parks and trails and natural resources states that Sandy's natural and scenic landscape is an extension of the community, and that the city continues to develop recreation programs and a diverse and accessible park and trail system that is clean, safe, and functional, serving the needs of its residents. So that's our part of the comprehensive plan, as well as the Parks and Trails Master Plan supports that. The other thing that we worked on internally as a Parks and Recreation Department that will guide operating costs specifically was our financial sustainability plan. That was where, if you guys remember, we brought this plan before the Parks Board where we asked you all to rank service categories based on individualized benefit versus community benefit. And then we talked about those service categories as they relate to cost recovery. And so when we talk about cost recovery, we talk about how a specific program that falls under Park and Recreation, how much of that program is subsidized with general fund taxpayer money, or should what we spend also be what we bring in on revenue? And or with certain programs like summer camps, when we offer summer camps, do we offer a program that not only covers its costs, but makes additional money based on whether it's an individualized benefit or community benefit? And a really good example of that would be like a shelter rental. That is considered an individualized benefit because a citizen can rent a public asset for an individualized benefit. So therefore, our subsidy level is actually lower, and we expect to make money off of that for that individualized benefit. So if that brings back some memory of when we all dove into the financial sustainability plan. And then lastly, bringing it back to the adopted budget again. Part of the adopted budget includes a capital improvement plan. And a capital improvement is a large infrastructure project that, again, like Cedar Park, is considered a capital improvement plan. And in the adopted budget, you'll have a CIP or a capital improvement plan that will guide the next 5 years as far as, like, as a department, what projects do we try to accomplish and do we have the funding for it? And then this is the exciting part where the Parks Board can help influence what CIP projects the department should pursue and provide recommendation and help influence potentially how the next phase of budget planning goes. Okay, so who gets to make those decisions? We get to influence them, you guys as the Parks Board, but ultimately it comes down to the City Council and then the Budget Committee. And the City Council, as you're aware, is the mayor and 6 members, and then the Budget Committee includes the mayor, 6 City Council members, and 7 additional members appointed by the City Council. So that group, and so the process will go, the city staff will start to develop the budget, we'll take it to the city manager. The city manager will then take it to the Budget Committee. The budget committee meets, and then the budget committee takes it to city council for adoption. And let's see here, there's a timeline, and we'll get to the timeline here in a sec. But let me talk about the budget philosophy for the Sandy budget. And this is really a fantastic philosophy, and one that I've found, coming from previous budget experience, that we have an expenditure controlled budget. And what this means is that, in essence, we are allocated a certain amount of funding from the general fund. If we manage and control our expenditures and we bring in additional revenue, any of those differences can be rolled over into the next biennium. And so what this does is it does a couple of things. And as a department, we're a general funded department. So by controlling our expenses and exceeding our revenue projections, we feel empowered to meet goals, creatively spend, and then we feel encouraged to expand services that provide programs for the community while exceeding our revenue projections. So as one of the general fund departments, we feel empowered by this goal of having this expenditure controlled budgeting. And by this philosophy, it also means, again, that we can carry over any savings. So a department, like for us, for example, we can carry over any unspent funds in the next biennium, and it removes that whole government spend it or lose it mindset. And it's more of a, if we're creative, what can we do with this money we can carry over that would benefit the community in the long run? So it actually encourages us to be responsible with the budget. And then it allows us as a department to save that fund for potentially one-time expenses. So we could look at equipment that's needed, maybe a capital expenditure that we didn't plan for in the previous year. So part of that would be an example like Tupper, the playground at Tupper, for example. We were able to be creative with replacing that playground that was definitely unsafe, and it was actually suggested that we rip that down. We were able to dip into a little bit of our carryover money and SDCs, which we'll talk a little bit about here in the future, to replace that playground and make it safe again for folks. So that's an example of how this budget philosophy really has benefited this department. And then the other thing is that the council directs the allocations. So with a council directed allocation, the budget clearly shows general revenue allocations for each department from the general fund. It's clear and transparent. And then these allocations that are set by the city council during the budget process, again, it's transparent. We know where our money's coming from. The public knows how we're spending it. And then it helps us, like as a department, when we sit down, we'll start to talk about creating our budget. We're going to estimate our revenues. We'll project justifications for our expenditures. And then that helps us create a budget that also justifies the council directed allocations. So it's a real transparent and collaborative way for our department to plan for the next biennium budget. Okay, as promised, here's the budget timeline. So we all know what's coming up. So in January of 2025, which is not that far away, surprisingly, it's fantastic. We're actually talking about this. It feels like just yesterday. We were talking about our first biennium budget that we created as a Park and Rec department. So congratulations, team, for our second round. This is good. January, we'll be talking about goals, and the council will have a goal setting workshop. And then they'll interview and appoint the budget committee members. Then in February, department directors will start to prepare our individual budgets. And actually, we're a little bit ahead of the curve because we're starting that process now. And then in March, the city manager will prepare the proposed budget. April, the administration will publish the notice for the budget committee meetings. And then they typically hold their first and second budget committee meetings in the month of April. Sliding into May, they'll hold their third and fourth budget committee meeting. And the budget committee during this month will typically approves the budget. And then a budget summary and notice will be posted for the hearing. And then in June, there'll be a budget hearing where council will meet to enact the resolution to adopt the budget. make appropriations and oppose taxes. And then this is the month, if everything goes according to timing, they'll submit for tax certification documents to the county assessor. And then in July, we'll submit a copy of our budget to the county. I just want to point out that there's a difference between a fiscal year and a calendar year. And our fiscal year is July 1 through July 30th. And we are a biennium budget, which means we project and adopt a 2-year budget. Okay, so we're going to start out speaking at the 50,000 foot level. We're going to talk about a pie and the budget pie. And so we'll learn a little bit about our citywide resources. So as a city, where do our funds come from? And then once we understand this, we'll dive into a little bit more specifically the parks budget. So a large source of revenue is our fines, fees, and assessments. And this includes things like charges from water, wastewater, stormwater, Sandy Net, and SDC fees go into this chunk. And you can see that's the orange one. That's about 38% of total city revenue. Our beginning balances and revenues include any future capital expenditures and paying down bonds, department carryovers, and funding contingency. So if you look at the beginning balance, which is about 18%, this ties back into what I was just talking about as far as the City of Sandy's budgeting philosophy. So beginning balances, that's that 18%. Then you have intergovernmental revenues, which are state shared revenues like your liquor and cigarette taxes, your state gas tax, and then the county library also is in this intergovernmental revenue. And then you have grants, which includes county, state, and federal grants. And specifically to Parks and Recreation, we have several grants that fall into this category. And one is the county grants for senior services. We also received $500,000 from Cedar Park, which would have fallen into the grants. And then around $100K for the Cedar Creek Trail and Sandy Bluff improvements also fell into this slice of the pie for grants. We have loan proceeds, which is 17%. And this is typically when a government takes out a loan to fund projects. And then with that, they're basically reflecting future revenue. And then we'll pay that off as we accomplish those and pay off that debt, that future revenue essentially. So it's a loan. And then property taxes. And I just want to note that property taxes, it's 8% of this pie of the revenue citywide, but it's the largest source of revenue for general fund. And this is important, and I'm telling you this because our department is funded through general fund. So, okay. Any questions on that? Do you guys want me to just keep going? Good, okay. So citywide expenses. So we talked about revenue, let's talk about expenses. So the largest expense in the city is our personal services and our capital outlay. And of course, personal services are going to be your salaries and benefits for employees. And that includes 18%. Materials and services is 15%. And that's going to be your contracted, your professional services, your supplies and equipment, repairs, and utility and maintenance. And then transfers is 13%, and that reflects the charges of services between departments. And this is also unique in that, like Park and Recreation, for example, we pay and do an internal department fund transfer to services within other departments to support us. So for example, human resources, any technology or IT support. And so it's calculated out. So we help pay for any of the support our department funds. And then you can see here, personal services is 22 million, materials and services about 19 million, debt services, and then transfers. Okay. Now we're not going to talk about a pie, we're going to talk about a donut. And we're going to look at our operating costs. So in total, if you look at recreation, senior services, parks and building and grounds, which is under the Parks and Recreation umbrella, our total budget is roughly $4.3 million. Of that, 2.8 of it is general fund allocation, which means of our $4.3 million, 66% is general fund allocated. So the other 33 points, the other 34% of the PNR budget is really revenue that we gather through like recreation fees such as youth sports, adult softball, sponsorships, and fundraising. We have our senior services, which we raise revenue through like our classes and activities, our building rentals, our nutrition program. And then in parks, we have $1.4 million that's allocated from the general fund, which is 84%. And what we're trying to do with our parks is be creative on how to raise funds and revenue to help offset that general fund cost. And we're limited on how we can do that. And so part of our financial sustainability plan included shelter rentals, which is revenue that goes right back into the parks budget. And then the other source of revenue under the parks, buildings, and grounds is the Bornstead House rental. So it's a highly subsidized portion of the budget, but typically that's completely standard as far as like parks, buildings, and grounds. So again, emphasizing that we're really trying to push for generating revenue where we can in that budget. And then coming back to the donut, you can see here that general fund allocations are 66.4%. And then other funds, we bring in about 34% of other funds. And that's our full park and recreation operating costs. Okay, so again, stepping back and taking just a little bit wider look at this, this is the other slices of the budget pie. So of the general fund money and all the departments that fall under the general fund, and there are 18 different funds, this is the amount of the slices of pie or the percentage that are allocated to each department from the general fund. The total general fund amount is about 12.4 million. Of that 12.4 million, police take about 54%, libraries close to 2%, planning is 7.4%, and then your other departments, which include admin, council, administration, and court, that's about 3.3%, and parks and recreation is at 22.8%, and then non-departmental is 9.7%. I heard everybody go, what is non-departmental? Well, to answer your question, non-departmental are the expenditures that do not apply to a single department and miscellaneous expenses that aren't associated with any of the operating departments. So for example, it's the contingency or rainy day fund. What in the past, what has happened with that contingency or rainy day fund, for example, is there have been grants to construct structures for outdoor dining and local restaurants. And then the goal is every city wants to have a contingency set aside for things like unexpected weather incidences that happen. And then budget notes in 2023, 2025 talk about how the non-departmental budget included the receipt of the American Rescue Act, so the ARPA funds and general revenue. And then the goals for contingency is to maintain a 5% of general fund for contingency, which is about $1.2 million. So there's the large pie of revenue. So switching from operating funds, let's talk about capital improvement. So there are two funds that fall under capital improvement. And if you remember from earlier, capital improvement funds can't be used for operating, operating can't be used for capital improvement. And so under capital improvement funds, you have two main funds that fall under Parks and Recreation. And one is your Parks and System Development charges and your fee in lieu. And then there can be general fund allocation if the council decides to allocate additional general funds to offset capital improvement projects. But for right now, is fees that we raise as a department that will help with capital improvement projects. These are the two buckets. So, rewinding a little bit in history, the Park System Development charges, we had lots of meetings that talked about system development charges. And we looked at adopting our methodology, which we did via council. We talked about an implementation plan. Council adopted a resolution for implementation plan. And so now we're talking about SDCs as one of the buckets that pays for capital improvement projects. So under SDCs, you have two different types. You have reimbursement and you have an improvement SDCs. Improvement SDCs are used for future infrastructure that isn't already in your system. So Cedar Park, for example, used system development charges, about $2 million for improvements for SDCs for Cedar Park. Now you have reimbursement, which is a different fee, but it's a different system development charge, but it's less restrictive. So you can use reimbursement SDCs to reinvest back into your park system that currently exists. So again, having a reimbursement SDC allowed us to do things like a portion of the replacement for Tupper Park for the playground. We will be able to use reimbursement SDCs for the improvements and upgrades for Meinig. Whereas if we didn't have reimbursement SDCs, we would not have been able to use improvement SDCs for a project like Meinig. So having a reimbursement SDC that was adopted through our methodology has been actually magic for our system. Our current rate as of July 1 for SDCs for a single family resident is $12,117.67. Of that amount, the reimbursement portion of it is $8,897.09. So that means for every $12,000 we bring in, close to $9,000 is a reimbursement portion of it. Then we have fee in lieu, and fee in lieu is specifically dedicated for future land purchase. And it could be for future land purchase for parks, for a sports or complex, potentially maybe someday a recreation facility could go on that, but it's money that's dedicated only for future land use. And it's when a developer comes in and they develop, they can do one of two things. They can dedicate property to us that accommodates future parks, properties for recreation, or they can pay a fee in lieu of dedicating parkland. The current fee in lieu, which is assessed on 1 acre of developable land, is $869,242. So those are the two main things that fund our Parks and Recreation Department for capital improvement projects and or land purchase. Then we have the SDC allocation. And this is, I just want to review real quick what was in this last 2023-2025 biennium adopted budget. The SDC allocation was $3.5 million. And of that, 1.8 was for the community campus or Cedar Park, 1.5 million for Deer Point, and then $200,000 for Meinig. And again, all of those were SDC allocations for the biennium 2023-2025. And then land purchase or fee in lieu was 1.5 million, and that was set aside for potential land acquisition. And this again is for purchasing future athletic fields, natural areas, or open space preservation, which is aligned with the city goals. As an illustrative example, I pulled this chart out of the adopted budget. And you can see here that there's a whole section dedicated to Parks capital projects. And this is part of the adopted budget. This is, again, that guiding North Star that says what projects have been adopted for our capital improvement. And this, you can see here, this is an example where I pulled those numbers that were reflected on the last slide. This is something that will be updated in the next round of budget adoption because some of these have been completed. We'll allocate additional funds if the council sets it as a goal for future parks like Meinig, for example. So we'll, our hope is we're budgeting right now for the design and public engagement for Meinig. And then in the next biennium, we'll have to do an estimate of SDCs and see where we're at to accomplish like the actual construction and the implementation for Meinig restoration. So it's important that we take that look ahead. And then this updated CIP will be reflected in the next updated budget. And then we're planning on construction of Deer Point sometime in 2025, 2026. And again, so that money will stay in the CIP for a future park project that's already been in the CIP. And then we get to celebrate a little bit and talk about 2023, 2025 council goals and how the Parks and Recreation Department has aligned with those goals. And again, we'll be talking about this with the city manager, who in turn will be setting goals with the city council. So these goals will change for 2023, 2025. But looking where we are now, the goals included design and construction of the community campus park and improvements. We can celebrate and say that's complete. Complete the design and construct park improvements for Deer Point. That is currently in process. We're in land use right now, and we're looking at permitting over the summer. And then research and act upon the purchase of the parkland for future park facility and or natural space and open space preservations. We're currently in the research phase for this. And so that's something that's ongoing. And then one of the other goals the council had listed was work with the Oregon Trail School District for developing a new facility use agreement. So currently we're strategizing with administration and the council on how to best approach this. So that's an ongoing goal. Explore ways to connect Sandy residents with aquatic opportunities, including swim lessons and water exercise or safety programs. And that's complete. And that's a really good example about how the city budget really drove policy and supported our department in accomplishing that goal, because in the budget, the city council allocated $15,000 for us to accomplish this goal. So with those funds, we were able to connect the community with swim lessons and water safety programs at Mount Hood Athletic Club. And then the last one is reestablish a volunteer program and expand volunteer opportunities, which we have completed. Of course, we'll always keep expanding volunteer opportunities, but we implemented a software. We have better recruiting, better training. We've just built on what was there to accomplish this goal, and we're really proud of it. So. Okay, so we're almost at the end. One of the things that I just really wanted to accomplish tonight is looking forward to the next biennium 2025-2027 and looking at forming the CIP, starting those conversations and understanding your role in the budget recommendations. And so key strategies for the Parks Board to remember will be that goals will be based on council priorities and projects currently underway to provide recommendations. And so like we talked about, mining restoration and improvements, that's something we're currently working on the design public engagement phase right now. The question will be, Parks Board recommendations and talking a little bit more about the funding for the next biennium. And then we'll complete the construction phase of Deer Point in the next biennium. So that's a natural rollover into the next biennium, being that we're closing in on July as far as the end of this biennium. It's good that the Parks Board has an understanding of the budget process. So gaining a deeper understanding of the city and the department budget and how it impacts funding and future goals, and what your roles can be when it comes to when we start planning here the next couple months. And then helping prioritize funding needs. So provide data-driven input to influence funding priorities for future projects and provide a recommendation to council. So that's where we're at right now. And yeah, this is again just an illustration of where we're at. So I would say we're in learning number one, and just learning a little bit more about what the Parks Board role would be, guidance by Chair Robertson as far as involvement in next steps and agenda setting, and then talk about recommendations, and then what's the Parks Board role as far as engagement when it comes to the next biennium budget. And that concludes my presentation. I hope everybody's still awake and you absolutely are on the edges of your seat wanting to ask questions. I'm assuming that's the case. Don, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rochelle. I am wide awake. Not a problem. Does anybody have any questions about the process as identified by Rochelle? Not seeing any hands.
Oh my gosh, don't let me off this easy, you guys. Ask some really hard questions.
Well, I have a question.
Oh no. Oh, I mean, you're good.
When it comes to the goal setting process, will we have an opportunity to chime in a little bit?
Regarding city council?
Yes.
Yeah, what I would suggest with that is if the Parks Board is interested in helping with the goal setting, that we explore the idea of setting up a meeting in the future that provides the opportunity for the Parks Board to provide recommendations. And that will then in turn, we would present to the city manager, who could present those options for the council to discuss during their goal setting session. And I don't know if maybe Lori has some insight on this. I don't know if it's the goal setting is going to be in January, if they're going to have it earlier than that. But that would be an option to provide a recommendation from the Parks Board that could influence that.
Lori, what say you?
Yeah, so Dawn, in my past 6 years, we've always done the goal setting in January. So I think Rochelle's spot on with everything that she talked about. I would look for that to be the same moving forward in this biennium. And I think if you want to have some input, I believe you did 2 years ago as well. I definitely would entertain that and think that you should pursue that.
Very good. Okay, maybe December we can have a little chat as, you know, not the main event for the meeting, but maybe a little agenda item to talk about any goals that we see that we would like to achieve. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Well, I am not seeing any hands. So I will just say, Rochelle, good job. I think that it is important. I don't think we can talk about it enough. I think it's important that we all have a good understanding of it. Even though we are an advisory board, I think that our advice goes both to staff and to city council via our representative. I think it's very important that we are versed in that and can take the opportunity to advocate on behalf of the community for what we believe are the needs of the community. So thank you very much. Any other questions or comments regarding this item before we move on to updates? Nope, not seeing any. So let's go ahead and move on to, we have no old business, so let's go ahead and move on to staff updates.
Well, what I'll do is just quickly pass it to Tiana and let her speak about some of the major park programs that we've got going on. And I just real quick want to highlight, just as we all celebrated a little bit offline, just the grand opening of Cedar Park. It's just a wonderful milestone that we've finally reached. And I just want to recognize the Parks Board's role in influencing the design and being part of that basically from the beginning. So just sincerely thank you. It just felt like such a rewarding day to know so many people had a part in seeing that come to fruition. And so thank you for that. I just wanted to take a moment and express my appreciation. So Tiana, I'm going to throw it over to you because nobody wants to hear me talk anymore.
Sure, we do. I don't have a big update for you right now. We are all hands on deck in Winterfest preparation. So I just want to echo the congratulations to my team and how proud I am of them. They have been showing up day after day, dedicated, positive attitudes, working really hard to provide maintenance to all of our parks and make a really special, exciting Winterfest for our community. We are almost done with installation. We are a week and a day away from turning the lights on because we're going live early this year. We put some new, really beautiful, fabulous things in the park today that I am so excited for people to come see. We're just working really hard out there. I can't wait to invite you into the park to come see it.
Excellent. I am looking forward to it myself. Rochelle, anything else?
I mean, I could pretend to be John, but those are some big shoes to fill. And I would probably get dates and stuff wrong for programs. So until next time, but we're pretty good about posting stuff on Facebook as far as all the different Winterfest events that are coming up. So take a look at that. We're still doing the Merry Makeover, which is wonderful. So if you happen to be talking to a business owner, encourage them if they aren't already to participate in the Merry Makeover. We are doing the Mayor's Awards still. So Stan Mayor Pulliam will have one more year of giving that award away. And I'm trying to think of any other large events. I mean, the staff is just very, very busy and holding the fort down. It's winter, oh my God, Mountain Storm is full speed ahead. Staff is working a lot of evenings, a lot of weekends. We've added more teams this year, so just kudos to those guys who this time of the year, everybody's just running 400 different directions, but we're glad we can offer that for the community. So I would say that's it. Said I wasn't going to say any more than I said a bunch. So
Well, that's okay. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the order?
It's a little off topic, but I noticed that during this last couple rainstorms that Mining Lake is trying to make a reappearance. Is that something that we're working on?
thank you, David, for bringing that up. Yes, and in fact, that's a perfect tie back to the budget conversation. That will be something that we'll be asking for in the next budget cycle. We were hoping we could get by with 2 years. And what we're finding is we'll probably have to every year and a half come in and essentially not renovate, but restore that pervious asphalt at Meinig Park. So did I get the timing right on that, Tiana? Is it every 2 years?
I think it was 21, 23, 21, 22 that we did the restorative cleaning there.
Yep.
It's just been here in the last couple weeks, almost like a switch was flipped. We went from draining good to unfortunately, we're not draining properly anymore again.
Yeah.
So we'll have to plan for another cleaning of that where that's not something we have the capability to do in-house. We'll have to bring a company in and have them help us do that.
So,
And I was just, oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
just to clarify, had you had planned for a certain cycle of cleaning and you're finding that it's too far out, so you have to shorten that. So that would be
So
more, right?
When we did the cleaning, it was a little bit of a learning curve. It had not been done before, and we researched a lot of companies and options, and we brought a company in that was extremely successful, and they thought we might get a little bit more time in between cleanings. But we're finding the window's probably going to be a little shorter than we had hoped.
Yeah, so then in this next budget cycle, our hope will be to anticipate every 2 years having to do that restorative pervious asphalt. So then that will go under materials and services.
And what does that cost every 2 years?
It was 15,000.
Oh, okay.
Does that sound right, Tiana?
I would not want to throw a number out without pulling it up again.
Roughly. I'll take credit for that. And if it's wrong, I'll apologize later, but I'm pretty sure that's close. So. Yeah.
And is there anything that we could do throughout the 2 years that will maintain that process to keep it down a little bit in money? Or is it just something that we're gonna have to buck up and swallow and pay for?
I'm hopeful that if we were able to pursue the renovations in Mining Park and restore the creek and help with the flow of how the creek and some of the stormwater, the way it's coming into the park, that it may help us out.
Was the mining lake created because of the overflow of the creek, or is it just the rain hitting the pavement and not dissolving?
The parking lot is the low spot of the entire park, so all of the stormwater surge comes there and it washes sediment into that parking lot. And that's what's clogging the drainage and slowing it down. So when we have these really big storm events that overwhelm the storm drains, the drains that are at the end of No Name Creek, and then there's also another creek that would be, let me get oriented, east to the south side of the parking lot. There's a drain over there as well, and a creek that's not really talked about a lot, but both of those can get overwhelmed and then they flood and wash sediment out into the parking lot. My staff works really hard to try to blow the parking lot and keep sediment out of there. Now we have the street sweeper, so we're doing everything we can, but it has clogged quickly.
Good answer. Nope.
All righty then. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, let's adjourn our meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. Nice job, Rochelle, Tiana. Enjoyed it very much.